Hello and welcome to another episode of O Faces. I'm your host, Mr. Mocha, and today joining me is Pagan and Mr. Minx. I'm already stuttering. Excuse me. What's going on?
How you doing, man?
Doing well.
This is Pagan, everybody.
Welcome. Chris, did you get on yet? Or are you still...
All right. Hey, you guys got me now? I accepted that co-host thing.
You're in.
There it goes.
Yeah.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm lovely. I was just on Twitter looking at one of your little scenes, some clips, trailer. So I'm lovely right now. That was a nice primer for this.
Well, it's probably one that Mr. Mocha here is good.
Mr. Mocha was giving me some editing lessons this past weekend, so that I could up my editing game, my promo game, and so we picked one of Minx's videos to make the trailer for, and it's done really well.
It's pretty hot.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot of a good engagement rate this week since we put it up. So
all right,
he knows what he proved that he knows what he's talking about.
I get lucky every once in a while. So Pagan, I'm gonna let you introduce the topic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's interesting because you and I discovered as we were becoming friends that we were both raised not only in like a religious background, which I have to say is actually not unique among the freaks and sex positive people that are in our circles. A lot of us come from religious backgrounds. We found out we were raised in the same religion actually, but the bottom line is a lot of us in America especially and in Europe raised in fundamentalist Christian religions a lot of times. There's other variations of it too that have some of the same basic ideas, but it wasn't lost on us how many people gravitate towards the lifestyle that came from a very cloistered religious background. And then as we were talking about that and the coincidence of us happening to be in the same religion, we thought it'd be a good topic to bring up because, there's so many people like us that go from, it's the cliche, right, of the Catholic schoolgirl is the freakiest one. So there's some truth said in that jest that coming from a really strict religious background oftentimes leads you to lifestyles that are alternative to that later in life. So we thought we would chop it up about that with these folks that are joining and, anybody who has had that similar experience.
And Chris, how about you? Did you have any religion in your background?
Oh, I had a lot of religion in my background, but it was different strain of religion, I guess. I was raised Roman Catholic, and so that Catholic schoolgirl reference that Pagan just made, that's what I grew up with, and literally, like when I got into high school, was at a Catholic Jesuit high school, and the school uniforms were enforced in my first year there. So we had all the young ladies walking around in either black slacks or the plaid skirt and the white, Oxford shirt. We didn't have to wear ties or anything like that, but it was
Britney Spears. The
Britney Spears look. Yes, the
Nice.
Britney Spears outfit, which as a 14-year-old young male with a very overactive sexual imagination, I'm telling you, it made studying difficult.
Yeah,
and then we had the nuns as the teachers, looking at you, and like you're trying to look sideways at this young lady, and then all of a sudden you look up and there's this mean, cranky, kind of dried face of a senior older lady who just knows what you're thinking, and she's just kind of got that ruler in her hand, just sort of slowly tapping it, like, just try it, young boy, just try it. So,
there's one thing going on. There's a few.
There's a whole lot of stuff going on in my early youth from the Catholic upbringing. But again, Christianity, the societal rules that come that are sort of delve out of organized religion of whatever it might be. It was just when you mentioned that Pagan wanted to talk this topic, and then said that you guys both came from the same faith backgrounds. That blew me away, knowing Pagan's craziness.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, this is going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah, well, Mr. Mocha and I were both raised Jehovah's Witness, and just so folks know, because I don't know how much people know about it besides the fact that they knock on your door and wake you up on Saturday morning. But that's a religion that's basically fundamentalist Christians. Very similar to a lot of Christians. They believe in Adam and Eve, and Noah gathered the animals by two, and mankind is 6,000 years old, all that stuff. So they're Christians, and we grew up in the same one. I was an ordained minister in that when I was 16 years old. So I was already, my dad was like a high mucky muck in the church, so I was a preacher's kid. But I started doing that myself at 16, and I was on that path for at least 10 years, moving up in that church. So, but if you're a fundamentalist Christian, you kind of get what they do. So, yeah, that was our background, and we were surprised to find out. I don't know what your experience was like, Mr. Mocha.
So my experience was, there's part of my family were Southern Baptists. The other part were Jehovah's Witnesses. And same thing, you grow up, when you grow up within a certain religious structure, me being the kind of person I am, I love to learn. So I was always very intrigued by religion. So, I knocked on doors too. I knocked on doors, and then, there was a portion where I was like, something, the restrictions I didn't like, and then I had a part of my life where, my first wife was, very, very much into the religion. So, trying to be a good husband, I followed suit, I wanted to do good. And, same thing, there were a few years where I was on a very strong path and focusing, but, I just got to a point where honestly, what made me follow the faith was being intrigued by learning. But then I got to a point where it's just like, I didn't want to be a hypocrite. And so, when I exited, I was very honest and very clear, like, hey, I just can't do this. I don't want to live a double life. I want to be who I am, and I don't want to be restricted, and what's interesting is my ex-wife, she struggled with the desire, I think a lot of religions, they create this this feeling of guilt when it comes to sex. And, she was in a constant state of guilt for her sexual desires. And that was a thing that also pushed me further out, because watching her internal struggle, because, you have sexual desires, but, am I going to die? Is God going to, am I going to lose out on everlasting life because, I want oral sex? It's like,
Yeah.
So, that was me.
That's a lot of us. And that's kind of one of the things that religion thrives on is the fear.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I can teach you, like, George Carlin has this great, routine about religion, and he talks about how, God has these rules, he's got these commandments, and if you don't follow them, then you're going to burn forever and ever in a fiery hell for all eternity. But he loves you. So there's the love part, is not one of the things that is the big motivator. It's the other part, that, you know, the fear that I'm going to be punished, the guilt, which, you know, I'm sure you're being raised in the Catholic faith. The guilt is a big part of that, and so is for a lot of my Jewish friends in a lot of religions. So yeah, there's that part that we, even if we don't follow the religion later in life, though, when it comes to sexuality and expanding the bounds of what we think of in terms of just what is acceptable and, you know, the lifestyle and opening up your marriage, all those things are off the table. And even if we leave the religion, it's a part of us.
It sticks.
You know, there's a reason why religion is brought to you when you're young, because physiologically, on the evolutionary scale, children are designed in their DNA to listen to adults and believe what they say is true. That was important for us, especially, you know, think about the prehistoric human. They have to, like, listen to their parents. Listen, when you leave the fucking cave, don't go left. There's fucking saber-toothed tigers over there. Go right, and you'll be okay. If you didn't listen to the older people, you died. So that's a physiological trait that's inherent in a child. We listen to our parents when they say, look, you know, both ways before you cross the street. But that's also why religion is introduced to you young, and it can stick with you. If you try to convince an adult of a lot of the things that a lot of religions are saying, they will reject it and be like, that doesn't make no sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But a child will pull that in on a level that no one else can pull it in and keep it with them for the rest of their lives. So there's a lot of interesting things about religion that are, you know, whether you look at them as positive or negative, that are intrinsically bonded to us. And we have to work, if we want to be free of it, we have to really do the work to try to pull back from what you've been taught and retrain yourself. What do I actually think outside of what I was taught to think?
Yeah, and that's difficult, because going back to what you just said, especially when it's introduced young, you know, you just have to think about, you know, my challenge was I was too logical of a person. Even at a young age, I was too logical. All right. And going back to what you said, logically speaking, if the person that, you know, taught you how to brush your teeth, taught you how to tie your shoes, taught you, you know, they taught you about gravity. If you walk down those stairs before you know how to do it, you're going to slide down and hurt yourself. This person taught you everything. And a huge percentage of what they taught you was from a place of love, a place of caring. And so now you're also emotionally tied to those teachings that your parents introduced to you. And, you know, the person you trusted with all of these other things, it's hard for a person to sit back, break it down, and doubt those things, you know. And so, you know, for me, like, I was, you know, growing up, I always had an issue with the concept of monogamy, because, you know, me being a student of anything that I'm being taught. Okay, well, you're teaching me about Abraham and Moses. You're teaching me about Isaac and Jacob. You're teaching me about King David and Solomon. And all of these guys had multiple wives. Like, so what, I can do it or I can't do it. I'm supposed to look up to these guys, or I'm not supposed to look up to these guys. So for me, oftentimes, I always had challenges with, you know, the elders of the congregation, because I'd ask the questions that everybody else is like, you know, well, that's just what it is. Well, no, because you're telling me about these things that are supposed to be logical, and then I'm supposed to follow how much of this person's example? You know, so I never, that was my challenge.
Yeah.
But it goes back further than just your family unit. Like, Peggy, when you mentioned, you know, back at the beginning of time when the man was starting to figure out how to live in a society, it was religion that sort of first set the ground rules for the populace, those who gathering together all in the same cave, and then the cave next door, and then the cave next door. They need to have some sort of structure and organization rules to live by that kept it a peaceful society. This is before government even was developed, right? And so the religious leaders, you look back like the American Indians, they had the shaman, who was sort of the senior elder, and he kind of set the rules that were passed on from his generation. Those rules are designed to keep society moving in a positive manner. And then you have the religious rules around sexuality. You got to control population. You need to have that guilt so that there's people aren't just running around procreating with everybody. It takes us from the nature, our animalistic nature of procreation and continuation of the species, to an organized structure of don't go stick your penis in that young lady over there because that's wrong at that age. All those different kinds of things. So it's come through and developed over time of these ages into a construct in the different factions of different religions and stuff like that as just a way of controlling the people. And Mr. Mocha, like you said, all of a sudden you're in conflict when they say monogamy, and yet the history of the religion tells of these stories of those who are non-monogamous. And so I think that there was a purpose for it. And then as you grow and mature, yes, as a child, Pagan, like you said, your parents, they teach you and you follow suit, and you have good success when they give you these rules. But there does come a time, and that's everybody's personal journey and their development, just like in swinging, right? You're like, oh, we can do this. How do I start? Same thing in religion. Your children, we're all kind of raised by what our parents believe. And then there comes a time as you mature that you start to question those beliefs. And then, at least in the Catholic Church, there's the profession of faith, and there's the baptism, and then there's confirmation when you are now that young adult, and you can sort of make your own decisions that you confirm that you believe in the tenets of Christianity and the church, right? So there's those opportunities to reinforce those rules that you had. But like in my case, in Mr. Mocha, we struggled. There was questions in there. There's urges that my body is driving me to, that nature is pushing me to, versus the rules that I was being taught in my home and came from our religious beliefs. And that's, I think that's the bigger scope. And then we can take that down into the individual experiences that each of us have had in our different structure of religion, right?
Absolutely. And I've always thought that, even with what you're saying about religion, because you look back, for Americans especially, the concept of, Christianity and, monogamy between one man and a woman. I believe that was something that was introduced. I believe that was introduced in the Roman Empire once Christianity got big, and because of the size of the empire, because, you can look at, and, I don't want to get too nerdy, but you look at other great civilizations and great empires, you look at the Mongol Empire, Genghis Khan and his, they had as many wives as they can capture, but they also had shamans that manipulated society in certain ways. And so for me growing up, we go back to the same thing where I say, for me, monogamy was not natural. To me, breathing is natural. Sleeping is natural. To me, monogamy was a choice. And, for someone to try to convince me that a thing that was natural, that is not, eating is natural. I don't have a choice. If I don't eat, I'm going to die. If I don't drink, I'm going to die. If I don't breathe, I'm going to die. But if I fuck 12 people, I don't think I'm going to die. I've tested it out. At that point in my life, I've seen it done, and none of these guys were dying. So I'm like, so that was my question, for someone to try to tell me that monogamy was natural, I didn't understand it. Gravity is natural. There's a law to gravity. But, the fact that I can literally birth a nation with my own penis and semen, I felt like, it's just, you can't tell me that I'm designed to only have sex with one person. Like, I mean, the amount of cum that I had from the time that, fucking 13 to 16 is enough to birth a nation. So you mean to tell me that I can come and keep making people until I'm 70, 80, 90 years old, but I'm only supposed to be with one? That didn't seem natural to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because, like, well, a couple things. Like, Chris, when you were just talking about religion was originally designed to keep us together, and that at that time period early on, in the way it controlled people, that's a really good point. And also, as Mr. Mocha was just talking about, there was a different version of religion back then. This is prior, obviously. This is way before Christianity. So you've got tribal religions. You've got religions that basically allowed for all the things that we're talking about that Christianity doesn't. They did have multiple wives. The reason why you brought up like King Solomon is because he was pre-Christian. And you also brought up the idea of building a nation. That's supposed to be the excuse. If you were to ask your average priest that tells you to be monogamous, well, why were they able to do it? Their answer is, oh, well, God was trying to build a nation back then, so he let people have multiple wives and have sex with their, maid servants and all that. It was important back then, but now it's not.
And it wasn't for pleasure back then, right? It was that whole purpose of continuing the species.
Yeah, and I guess, it all depends on what you say for back then, right? Even in the Bible, though, I think, I don't remember who it is, but there's at least one example where I think it might have been Abraham, but I'm not sure. But the scripture actually says he went into his wife to have a good time, which is an interesting way to put it. But I think you're right. Like, what we're talking about and circling here, we're not, this discussion is not here to diss any religion or religion in general, but it is encouraging critical thinking of whatever you believe. Right. So, like, for me, why did it change? Whenever you see something that's a law, you need to ask yourself, who benefits from this law? So if I say, oh, the law is, I don't know, segregation. Okay, that's the law of the land. Who's benefiting from it, though? That's the question on whether I should follow that law. And to me, there's a very clear path to not only religion wanting to take control of people, but also patriarchy wanting to take control. There's an aspect of this where men wanted to control women's sexuality because, as you know, and I'm sure many of our listeners know, women's sexuality is a motherfucking powerful force in the universe.
I think that's Pagan. I'll jump in right there and say I absolutely agree with that. I think women would control the world if it weren't for the patriarchy of males putting the rules and the shaming, if you will, to control that sexual energy. I mean, these are the other half of our species here who can literally bring life into the world and then care and nurture that to adulthood. I mean, it's the most powerful of all powers, and yet a man's looking like, well, one side. I mean, we see it in the animal kingdom all the time. After they mate, who gets killed? They kill off the middle, right? Yeah. I don't need him anymore. I'll bite his head off and I'll move on because I'm moving forward.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much.
So you got to figure out a way to control that. If you're a man, you're like, okay, well, let's start putting rules on. They can only be with one. I can have many wives, but they can only have one husband. Well, yes. If she has multiple, now she is a whore. She's a scourge on society. She gets the scarlet letter in olden times. I mean, it's just, there's all kinds of craziness. But again, it's to control these women who are built for multiple partners. They have multiple erogenous zones. I mean, everything about a woman is sensual and seductive and designed to be the top of the pyramid.
Yeah. And what you're talking about was noticed a long time ago by men in control, and they had to try to quell that and put a bridle on it. So, again, not dissing religion, but just encouraging my personal encouragement. I'll speak for myself. My personal encouragement is my foundation of religion, I wouldn't change it for anything. I'm not a religious person now, but I am extremely, I wouldn't say extremely. I'm open to spirituality. And I mean, my fucking name is Pagan. We're talking about those old religions. So, and that, if anything, I worship the old gods. And the old gods let you come around to Saturnalia in a time of rebirth for festivals. And back then, when tribes were tribes, there was a problem, just like there is in any society, where if you just fuck the same people in your group, you're going to have problems genetically. So every year, people would get together, go out into the woods, meet other tribes, and fuck. That's how you got new DNA into your tribe. And those women would go back pregnant by other men. And that was the way that you kept your DNA pool moving without any, problems. So there was an aspect to it that was biologically and scientifically sound, but also was part of the religion. It was part of what connected everybody together. We moved away from that. We have these other versions, and I don't put away my religious background. I've incorporated it to the extent, like Mr. Mocha was pointing out, to the extent that I agree with it. And that's the other thing. Giving yourself permission to agree with things and not agree with other things within your religion. To give yourself permission to say, yeah, that doesn't make sense to me personally, but this part does. That's a huge hurdle that I had to overcome. I've obviously overcome it, but it's still something that I think I have to recheck in. Sometimes I'll make decisions or have snap judgments about things, and I realize, oh shit, that's my Christian background talking to me, and it has nothing to do with what I actually really think. That's just something that I'm pulling in from that whole, like we said, when I was a kid, this was made part of my life to a certain degree where I can't even really separate what of it was me or what of it was what I was taught. So, the word meme that we all use now when we share a cat video or whatever, that word was coined in 1976 by one of the most famous atheists of all time. And he took it from a Greek word that just means imitated. So when we share things, we just imitate it or we reproduce it. But he was applying it to religion. His book, The Selfish Gene, is about how he thinks that religion is actually a virus that you pass on to your young. And it spreads like a virus in the exact same way that a virus does. Now, obviously, this is an atheist who has a certain point of view on religion. I'm not saying that everyone has to share that view, but he felt that religion was something that was so viral that it not only infects you, but you pass it to your kids and they pass it to their kids, just like sickle cell anemia or some other disease, which is really interesting because your religion is vastly determined by where you live. If we all grew up in Baghdad, guess what? We'd be Muslim.
Yes.
Muslim.
Yes.
It's not a question of like, oh, I chose the religion that's the right path to God. No, it's geographics. Mm-hmm. It's what were your parents? Well, your parents were this, then that's what you are. So there's an arbitrariness to most of our choice in religion right there. So should we feel so tethered to it just because we happen to grow up in Colorado as opposed to Singapore? And that's the religion we are? Or should we be more open-minded and look at what fits us?
I mean, keep in mind, I think the biggest I agree with you 1,000%, but then I also look at the challenges that people deal with because, you still have to live in a society. That's why even amongst lifestyle people and within the lifestyle, you still have people who have these different challenges. How many times have you encountered a person or people who families found out about what they do in the lifestyle and they either leave the lifestyle or step out of it? Because, obviously, socially there's a thing. It's interesting. I was looking up, because, I was very interested in how like religion affects people's, sexuality. And, to me, since I think that monogamy is not a thing, I looked up, what religions cheat the most. And what was interesting is Ashley Madison did a study. And in this study, they broke it down. They said evangelicals are 25.1%, Catholics 22.75%, Protestants 22.7%, agnostics 2%, Mormons 1.6%, Muslims 1.5%, which actually surprised me, Jewish 1.4%, atheists 1.4%, Jehovah's Witnesses 0.05%, and Hindus 0.3%. But when you look at the Hindu religion, it was saying that people were 3 times more likely to cheat on their spouse if they were living outside of a predominantly Hindu society. You know, so to me, that brings up 2 things. Number one, going to what you just said, the area that you are, the environment that you live in is also going to dictate, you know, how much cheating you do, or because I think that affects the access to it. And then the fact that even you're still stuck by society, like society still determines how you do it. So for me, and my thought process is, going back to what you said, you take the things that you want and you don't want. I will never, ever regret studying the Bible and understanding religion, because at the end of the day, my father told me at a very young age, there's 2 books that you have to read and understand. One was the Bible and one was The Art of War. When he told me to read the Bible over and over, he said it's not for religious benefits. He says you read the Bible because every law, all of society's standards and systems they come from the Bible. So if you want to understand the world that you live in, you have to understand the Bible, because that's where the laws are coming from. Somebody's got to turn off their microphone.
Oh, it's not me.
No, it's not
Can you. Hear me?
Chris, mute your mic for a second.
Stand by. We're not making any noise, so.
No, you got a super sensitive mic. That somebody was back there touching something. That's all right. It happens to us too. I turned Mrs. Mocha's mic off when she sat down.
I can't hear myself though.
Oh, I think I have your headphones turned off. Mm-hmm. But so yeah, that to me, like when it came to religion, like for me, it was never so much of, even in this conversation, it's not so much of a knock on religion. It's kind of going back to what Pagan said, where, you know, you're making your decisions. And then when we start looking at how it correlates to the behavior, even within the lifestyle community. All right. The fact that there's so many people who are still dealing with, you know, sexual repression, and the fact that the people around them and the people they grew up with, they literally glorify the concept of denying yourself. It's glorified. It's you know, they're taught that, you know, feeling pleasure outside of, you know, the certain type of pleasure that the Bible says is okay, you know, that's a problem. So there are still people in lifestyle who restrict themselves within the lifestyle, even understanding that they've already stepped outside of it, but those doctrines that they're still, you know, holding on to still restrict them, you know. And, you know, I think dealing with the guilt is a big thing.
Yeah, it's hard, man, to make the distinction between society and religion when a lot of these societies are so intrinsically tethered to their religions. So in America, this wasn't a country that was just founded randomly by a bunch of Europeans.
Pagan, hold on one second. I'm gonna let you finish. Yeah. I know we have a couple requests. We will let the requests get in. Just make sure, just for the simple fact that oftentimes we'll have people who just want to get on and just yell and shout. If you want to get on and speak with us, send a question in the comments. And as long as we know that you're a real person and you're not somebody who just wants to jump on and say crazy shit outside of our crazy shit, you know, just send a message. Go ahead, P.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially with this topic. but yeah, it's hard. Like for Americans, Christianity is intrinsically intertwined with this society. I can't pull Christianity away from it. It's on our money. It decides what the abortion laws are. It decides.
You still there, P?
I think he lost.
Did we lose you?
He's gone.
All right, Mrs. Mocha, while we're waiting for him to come back, you want to read some of the comments?
I'm just trying not to get struck down right now for talking shit about this. I did not want to be a part of this. So.
Oh, okay. The Pagan's back. Pagan, you disappeared for a second.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I have no idea what happened.
Yeah, you just blinked out.
Okay. But yeah, religion is such a big part of our society. I don't know what's the chicken or the egg. I don't think you can separate the two. So, with it's on our money. It decides our women's health issues and our laws, abortion rights. It's Christianity is covering everything that we do in this society. We're the number one country too that, leads in, people that believe in angels and all this other stuff. A lot of other countries have a lot of religion, but they don't have as many devoutly unquestioning religious people as we do. The level of atheists in other countries, for instance, is way higher than America. We're an outlier in all of the world. So specifically for Americans, I think that, the Christianity part and how we deal with sex, we were founded by Puritans, not just random Europeans. They were fleeing a country for religious oppression, and they came over here with a lot of stigma around sex, and they went around with missionaries. The reason why it's called the missionary position is because they were teaching that's the only way to do it. That's where we come from in this country. So it's a really hard thing to separate.
So is there religious context to doggy style?
I'm so dead.
For pagans, there are. Yeah.
Yeah. Outside of that, yeah, that was interesting. I was doing research on it before, and they were saying that.
Yeah, it is an interesting. We have certain things that were passed down to us that in other societies, for instance, in the tribal societies where women were not under patriarchy, they fucked each other's men. And not only did that not, it created a situation where you don't know whose baby that is. So the whole tribe has to take care of every baby like it's their own, which was a good thing. You weren't able to separate out, hey, that's not my responsibility. It created a sense of community and power amongst women as well, where it's the opposite of like what we sometimes talk about with cattiness or jealousy and things like that. The idea that there's a scarcity of men, so I have to fight for that, DNA, the seed, the resources that a man provides. They didn't do that back then. Patriarchy introduced that idea, which limited and made men more valuable. And that's not a coincidence. They were trying to elevate themselves. And that's one of the ways that men did it.
Okay. So, Mrs. Mocha, you want to read some of the comments?
Do I what? Yes.
You want to read some of the comments off, and then we'll let Chris.
To say something.
Or Chris, Chris, were you jumping in? Chris,
yep, I got you. I'm working this mic button on and off for you.
Okay.
You added another element to this podcast difficulty here. So I was gonna say that we're talking at the 50,000 foot level here on religion and all the backgrounds of it and stuff. But in the context of our series here about the male emotions and the lifestyle, religion, I think, creates a lot of that emotion. And Pagan mentioned it earlier, the guilt factor of I like this, I want to do this, and yet my religion tells me that this is bad, that I'm wrong for having these desires or fulfilling these desires. So each one of us has had to overcome some level of angst, if you will, for lack of a better word, how we became to accept who we are and how we choose to live. I am a man of faith, and to this day, I'm not a practicing Catholic, but I definitely believe in the tenets of Christianity and a higher power, because I've seen indications of those in my life, near-death experiences that just wasn't my time, that kind of stuff. But when it came to all this guilt as the young teenager that I was constantly, I can't confess this. Who can I talk to about this? Now, as an adult, I understand the segments of the Bible that actually, talk about it's okay to live this way and have this kind of lifestyle, as long as it's with love and honesty and openness, with this other partner. You honor your wife. Well, I'm honoring my wife by allowing her to be who she wants to be and not trying to control her and put her in that patriarchal form, using the tenets of the religion that I grew up with. And it benefits each of us to some extent. So that's why I want to jump in and say that this does come back to our male emotions and how we, use the religious stuff that we had to overcome, or maybe it enhanced us. If you had no religion, no faith, and all of a sudden you realize that, man, I meet some really wonderful, people that are godlike, that are contributing positively to society and come from a position of love. Be like, man, maybe this religion thing's not that bad. So that was all I was going to say. Now you can go read the
I got a comment on that, because I think I've shared before, my dad's a Southern Baptist preacher.
Here.
And what they say about PK kids, we all out here wilding, which 90% of the time is true, because you're controlled a certain way your whole life, and you have to act this way.
Mocha, are you still there?
Oh, can you hear us?
I'm so dead.
Yeah, we're here. She's coming out. We're hearing Mrs. Mocha.
Okay.
Somebody just said, are you still there?
Oh, okay. For some reason, I'm hearing you, but not her.
Oh, you can't?
Do you not have my mic on?
Can you hear now? I thought I had your mic on. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
I hear her coming through just fine. So.
Oh, you do hear it coming through?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm only hearing you.
Pagan, are you running bad old microphones like Mr. and Mrs. Mocha?
Yeah, Chris is talking to me.
No, man, I'm on my Bose headphones, man. They're crystal.
Maybe you're only.
I hear you good.
Maybe.
Yeah, for some reason I don't hear her at all. I'm not sure why.
Can you hear me now again? Oh, Mr. Mocha's messing with stuff. I can't hear myself. Can you hear me, Chris?
So, Mrs. Mocha, I definitely hear you, and I hear Pagan. And so Pagan can't hear you, but that might be an individual side, because Angel's sitting here listening on the other side of the room. She can hear Pagan. She can hear you as well.
Okay. I was just saying that.
Cole just said he heard you fine too.
If anybody else could just put in the comments if they can hear Mrs. Mocha, and Chris and myself as well.
Yeah, maybe something's happening.
Yeah,
but everybody can hear me.
Doyle just said he can hear you too.
Who?
Sir Walter Doyle.
Oh, he said he could hear me. Okay. Anyways, I was just saying that I feel like I was controlled a lot, so it caused me to while out. But then Mr. Mocha calmed me down a little bit, to what extent he could calm me down to, which was not a lot. But I mean, I agree that there's a certain it's like freeing, I guess, because Chris was saying about letting Angel just kind of be herself. It's very freeing. Sorry, there's a lot of background noise. I don't know what's happening right now, and Mr. Mocha's not sitting here, but I'll read a question if you want to help out with the answer. I wasn't here for this one, but I was told to read the questions. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I got you.
All right. Blushing Vixen says, it's sad that religion says their rules are to make us good people, but the rules are there to control the masses and make people, quotations, good people according to the leaders.
That's good. And then Fire put up a book. I'm very curious. I'd like to read this one. She found on Amazon, Sex Was God's Idea, an honest look at the biblical sexuality and the rightful role of women.
Who said that? You broke up a little bit, and I can't see all the comments, I guess.
That was Ginger Fire. She put a book link on there.
Okay, yeah, I can't see that one. I can only see like 3 or 4 comments, so I guess mine's not updating. Maybe we're having some internet issues over here. That could be a thing.
Yeah, I'm hearing that feedback when I talk.
That's super weird. Oh, I see it now. I just had to like keep going. Prez says, great conversation. Sanji San, maybe due to society, there have been limitations. Limitations on, I don't know when that comment got put up there, so I don't, sorry, I'm not as with it with you guys. I just came down here because I was supposed to read the comments, and Mr. Mocha walked off.
He needed a bathroom break.
Yeah. Oh, I see it. I see Ginger's now. Hi guys, must be my theme day for this conversation. Just ordered this book, and then the one that Chris was just talking about, and somebody else said that everything's clear and everybody can hear me, so only Pagan could not hear me. Oh, somebody said my mic is fuzzy. Well, I don't know about that. Blushing Vixen says Pagan's quieter than the others, but yeah, we can hear Mrs. Mocha. Oh, okay. Oh, you're going to have to read the last one. There, it's a lot, and I don't even understand it, so I'm going to be all over the place.
Okay, all right. So
I don't even know where it starts. It's like a book. Hold on, Mr. Mocha's coming. He's back, and he's going to do some stuff. But
I had a Forrest Gump moment.
Is that BBC Man's comment?
Yes, those, because I just don't know where they started.
Yeah, his two-parter. The critical theorist Helen Crixus delves into the idea that women's sexuality is not confirmed to a specific isolated location, but is dispersed throughout the entire body. She asserts that women should reclaim their bodies and experiences challenging societal norms. He goes on to say, I think this process of affirming individuality in the realm of sexuality within the confines of religious or societal constructs is an intricate and personal odyssey necessitating a multifaceted approach. Again, he's basically summing it up there that it's all individualized. And at that point where you become mature enough in your thinking as an adult to question and seek further knowledge in the religious tenets that you were brought up by your parents in, then you can choose to affirm and continue in that religious, or you can change to a different religion, or you can try out a different religion. I know a lot of the Christianity encourages you to go try out the different forms of Christianity and find the right one that fits with you or feels good. Again, the rules are the rules, but it's the people that make the community at whatever church or whatever religion that you join in with. Because there's the Roman Catholic Church sits in Italy. I've only been to Italy a couple times in my life, but the community that I grew up in, that was the people that I felt guilty around, and they go look at them on Sundays. Like, I know what I did last night. Do you know what I did last night? Because they kind of look at you with that down their nose. You're like, uh-oh. It's all in your own head. But that's that journey. Do we get our sound stuff figured out?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know if Pagan disappeared, so I don't know.
Oh, wait, he did disappear.
I think he got cut off because I heard a bunch of noise and then it was gone.
He's got it requested up there.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
Okay. I was lost. Maybe it was him then. It wasn't me.
Yeah. So I think that, for me, like I said, for me, it was always a logical breakdown because. Pause
before you really get anywhere, because
yes,
Ken says, wondering if anyone sees the lifestyle as a substitute for religion, or if anyone sees religion as a substitute for the kind of sexuality the lifestyle provides.
Wow, that's a hell of a question.
I literally was thinking about that upstairs when we were talking about like the culty shows that I've been watching lately.
Oh my God.
I literally was thinking that, like, wonder if lifestyle, like some people, I wouldn't say it's a religion, but it's something you do often. And it's the amount of people that you're, again, I'm not saying like lifestyle is like something.
I mean, it's a good question though.
But it is something we do in fantasy, so we don't live it 24/7, but some people do.
I mean,
right. And there's think about this. There's a lot of tenets inside the lifestyle, the rules. As people come in, they have to learn the rules of the lifestyle. That's very much like a form of religion.
Yep.
And we do this often, and we share, and we support, and we care, and we push each other, lift each other up and help them through difficult times by talking, and it's a lot of same things that a church would do. So I think Ken's onto something there.
Like I said, that's kind of like what I was thinking about when we were upstairs. But
I mean, it's another way to look at things.
I stay away from religion and politics, so this is not my jam.
I think.
Hey, Mr. Mocha.
Yes.
My lady, would you mind just repeating that point that you were making that you thought was interesting? Because I bounced out just to come back in so I could hear everybody, because I lost just you guys.
I don't even know what I was saying.
You read Ken's.
When I read Ken's thing?
Yeah.
It was Ken's quote.
Oh, he said,
okay, in the chat.
Wondering if anyone sees the lifestyle as a substitute for religion, or if anyone sees religion as a substitute for the kind of sexuality the lifestyle provides.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's funny that, forgive me because I had to bounce out and come back in just to catch everything, but there's this thing in France, they call it, when you have an orgasm, le petit mort, it's the little death. There's this aspect of like, I died for a second, like I went to heaven. There's an aspect to, if you think about the average person, the closest that they get to like an out-of-body experience, the closest that they get to having a magical experience, the old school MAGICK, that is an orgasm. It's the one thing that even if you're poor, you have access to. And it's that one moment where you transcend, you feel connected to something beyond yourself, whether that's your partner or something broader, like the universe. Sex is an avenue to that. So sex worship and sex magic was a part of a lot of those ancient religions. So it's interesting that that's brought up about the connection between sexuality and spirituality and how it can give you a connection beyond yourself. And I think that most of us have experienced that, even if it's on a rudimentary level, where you're with a partner and the sum of it is greater than just the parts. So there is definitely a spiritual aspect to sex. If you choose to explore it, it can be really deep. And that's one of the things that I've been interested in and exploring recently. I did a podcast about a sex magic ceremony that I did recently. But there are transcendent things that you can explore, if you're willing to go there.
I agree.
I see. This is Mocha. Eve the Sex Fairy has a comment in there. It says the Kundalini Yoga talks about the relationship between sexual energy and spiritual energy, which kind of goes to what Pagan was just talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's outside of the structures of like Christianity and stuff. These are things that are frankly just much older and that have been existing for thousands of years. It's hard for me to dismiss it. It's a thing in the world, whether you want to choose to believe in it or not. There's a reason why these things have existed for so long.
And so, me being the simple, uncomplicated person that I am.
Bullshit.
I look at it as a very simple thing. I think that, highly intelligent beings seek pleasure. I mean, you look at dolphins. I mean, dolphins are like, the next smartest or like the second most intelligent, high IQ animal on the planet. They have sex for pleasure. They do it because it's fun. They do it because it feels good. They do it not just to procreate. And I think when you think about behavior and intelligent life forms, you have laughter, you have the thrill of, things like swimming, running, jumping, So with all of those things that you have, sex is just another thing that's very natural. So from my standpoint, not to discount anything, to me, sex is just as natural as a smile.
Hold on. Pause on that. I agree with that. but my question is kind of around that. Like, do you feel like, because when I was growing up, sex was like, you didn't talk about it, you didn't do anything about it. Like, do you think that, why do you think there were restrictions on that in religion? Why do you think that's something that you're not supposed to talk about, or it's not something you're supposed to do, but it's such a natural thing?
Yeah. So that, to me, that's a 2-part thing. So let's say if you grew up on an island all by yourself, there are going to be 3 things that you're going to want. You're going to want food, you're going to drink something, and you're going to get horny. That's going to happen. That's nature. Like, those are functions of your body that are going to work no matter what. You know, the first time, fellas, the first time you touched your dick and realized it has some extra purposes, you was like, whoo. I'm sure the first time you flicked that little bean of yours over there, you realize that this thing can do more than just what you were accustomed to it. So let's get to just the basic nature of it. Those things are things that no one has to teach you about sex. No one has to teach you about hunger. No one has to teach you about thirst. So that's natural. Now, obviously, when we're starting to look at the religious aspect, we're only touching one thing that religion affects. If you look at,
aren't we talking about religion, sex, and lifestyle?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
No. Well, let me finish the sentence. I'll explain that. Mm-hmm. We're talking about one aspect of how, and this is going to be an ugly word, invasive religion has been on society. All right. Crusades, killing millions of people because they don't believe in your religion, it to me is not natural. And to me, I put that on the same level as telling people that you have to do a thing that you naturally want to do only based upon the limits that are put on you by this. Just like for someone to walk into your house and say, hey, from now on, you celebrate this religion or you die. Or, hey, from now on, you only have sex with one person or you die. There's no difference in that. So to me, that's the power of religion. Religion has the power to make people kill. Religions have the power to make people deny themselves to the point that they have, mental issues. You have people who, you have people who've practiced religions and they're in the church, they're crying because they want to masturbate. They're frustrated because, hey, I want to serve God for my whole life, but, I'm horny. What am I supposed to do?
But that's all I want to.
So I'm saying that
you're getting like really deep into it.
So to me,
what's the restriction is what I'm saying. If it's so natural, why the restriction? Why do you think religion restricts sexual activity?
To me, it's a control mechanism. To me, it's a control mechanism.
So.
You can.
I think that. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that, a control mechanism. So, you still, sorry, I get nerdy again. If you go way back to the time that you're looking at the Bible, at that time, you got to strike all the technology that we have. At that time, your strength as a society was based upon how many people you have. Okay, if you want to conquer, your strength as a society was by being able.
But we can't go back that far because
that's when the Bible.
That was when they were like a lot of the gods and
we're
kings had several different wives. All I'm saying is, where do you think the restriction came in? And why? Why was there a restriction put on sex that was related to religion?
Oh, because when the Bible. When Christianity had its major introduction into Roman society being the major world power at the time, you just did what was to be done. I mean, that was where it was introduced at.
Right, but the Bible says, that women are supposed to be submissive, like, blah, 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 blah. We won't get all into that, but so if that's the case, then, is that the submission? I'm just supposed to do whatever you say? We're not going. I do that already.
Well, you better do what I say.
You don't have to go there. But
I don't want to give you a spanking in front of all these people.
I think Pagan has something to say. Go ahead, Pagan.
No, I think you guys you're already circling it. It is a control mechanism. And I don't know if you were on earlier, but I think it was Mr. Mocha who was talking about that whole thing of King Solomon and those guys. They did have multiple wives. Mm-hmm. There are people in the Old Testament who not only had sex with their wives, they had sex with their maidservants. And the idea that I think Bible scholars explain that away as well, they had to up the population. God had his chosen people, and they needed to have more babies. So that was a temporary rule. But then when Christianity comes along, it's one wife, and that's it, and monogamy and all that stuff. At the end of the day, though, I don't buy that was necessarily a biblical thing. I think that was the structures of organized religion, back to what you guys were just circling. It's a way to control. In general, if people, I think the question was like, why was it so cloistered? Why don't we discuss sex and all that? If people start discussing it, they start thinking for themselves. If people start being open about it, then they start acting open about it. So let's restrict that. Let's make it taboo. Make it something that you don't talk about. It's way easier to control somebody who's not having conversations about these things than it is someone who is. And, you know, at the end of the day, when we think back, religion, literally the only people who could read were the religious class in many societies. That tells you, like, even today, if you go into a typical church in America, nobody in the audience knows what the preacher is talking about until he opens a scripture and says, go to this scripture. And a lot of times they don't even do that. They don't even encourage you to read it for yourselves. They just read it to you.
Do you think that's because they want to interpret it the way that they think it should be?
There's no question. The power does not lie with the gods. The power lies with the priests who tell you what gods are thinking. So if you have a middleman, and literally they did that, but the people could not speak. I was in a church in France, and a beautiful church. It's hundreds of years old. There's these huge columns. In the columns was like a laundry chute, okay? Like a drawer you could pull out. And I asked the tour guide, like, what are these chutes for? And they said, oh, well, that's because church would take all the grain, they would tithe everybody, and if you were hungry, the grain was up on the roof of the church, and if you wanted to eat, you had to come to church. And they would open the chute, and they'd feed you. It's why, and when the missionaries in Christianity in recent times, in the 60s and 70s, a lot of the times when missionaries came to other countries, they called them rice Christians. Because if you came to church, you got a bowl of rice. That's how you keep people. You keep them hungry and keep them ignorant. And then you can tell them anything you want to. So I think a lot of this, what you're asking, is circling what Mr. Mocha said. It's a control mechanism.
And people are easily controlled, just like that show you were watching yesterday. You're watching a show where there's a lady who everyone think is God, and she's telling them, okay, don't eat.
I've been watching like more like culty shows lately because I like true crime, and they were literally calling the lady Mother God and believed that she was God. Yeah, that. And then there was another one where the lady was just like a Southern, and she was basically telling them, like, just starve yourself and listen to what I say, and then everything will be good, and died in a plane crash. Like, bleh.
And that's an indication that is crazy. Is that like those types of shows are crazy to us, but that's a representation of religion throughout the ages. If you just take the time to look, and like you said, even about the reading, you know, there was a time when, you know, reading was not considered a quote unquote manly art. And if you were a man of religion, you could read, but you know what, men reading, what the hell is that? You know, we don't do that. You know, and that's once again controlling information. And the funniest thing to me is when we watch these shows about these quote unquote crazy cults, they interview people they're not crazy. The people who are following them, they're not crazy. They're high functioning people. They have jobs. They're articulate. They can speak. They work. They can have a conversation about anything else, but their faith in that individual is so extreme. And then to me, I laugh when I listen to people who've been going to traditional churches their whole life, listening to what I call the craziest shit. They're calling these people crazy for following this nutcase, and like,
But like even down to like I said, that not to keep bringing up the show, but the show that I was watching, the like 3 or 4 of the people that were like ex-church members or whatever on there saying, well, she just came into she came in my life in a time that I really needed something or somebody. So that lady made her feel comforted, or I can't even talk today.
Comfortable. Rice Christians.
Right.
Christians.
Right.
She provided them with something they were lacking. And, I mean, hell, you think
and
that...
now she's your mother God.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah, you know. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I agree with you, Mocha, too. Like, a lot of times, it's easy to make fun of certain religions, like these cults. All those people are crazy. Out here in LA, Scientology, you know, your late night talk show host and whatnot, they can all make fun of Scientology because they believe in this magic guy that comes from outer space and he's going to put you on a spaceship, and it's an easy target for jokes. But when I hear Christians making fun of that, for instance, I'm like, I don't know what you're laughing at, because you got a magic guy that came from outer space and raised the dead
Walks
and
on
on water.
Yeah.
Like, why are you making fun of these other people? Like, everybody has a magic guy.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, I'm not dissing it, but I wouldn't diss somebody else. If you believe in one thing, don't laugh at the other person, because your thing is crazy to somebody else.
Correct.
But, you know, and there's a difference I want to just point out too. I'm not lumping in cults with organized religions. There's a definition of a cult that takes things to another level that is often damaging. And religion, as Mr. Mocha pointed out, can be damaging. But there are a lot of similarities between cults and organized religion. I don't want to conflate the two and say they're the exact same thing.
I'm going to jump in. Can I jump in real quick here? Because before I get too far off of Pagan's earlier point about keep them ignorant and keep them hungry, right? Don't introduce the conversations, and then you can control the masses. That's just how the lifestyle operates. So you have traditional, married couples who are frustrated, and they're like, oh, I have to be with this one person, and after years together, their sexuality has devolved into, hey, fuck you, they call hall sex, right? There we had sex. Now they don't know where to go, and when they get a little bit of information, then they get turned into the lifestyle flow, and then they can meet couples, and we start talking and giving them information and enlightening their minds, if you will. We function the same way. So when they hear the word, when they come and talk to us and say, you're evil, I'm like, I disagree, and let me tell you what I think and how I came to those conclusions. A lot of times, especially, charismatic people like Pagan, like Mr. Mocha, Mr. and Mrs. Mocha, you can convince somebody through your words and actions that this is not wrong, contrary to what their religion has taught them. So yeah, keeping them ignorant, I think, is a key part here, and having conversations like we are today, where we can actually point that out, is a good thing. It's Too Secret wants to ask the question real quick too. Is it that the religion is good for humanity or not? That's like the third rail question there, and I'm not sure if we want to touch on that one, but it does kind of make you pause.
I can touch on it. It's not binary like that. It's not a yes or no question. It's a case-by-case thing. We all know positive things that religions have done. We all know negative things that religions have done. It's not a yes or no question. I need more information to answer that. But if you give me a specific case, I can answer it. We all know the Crusades were in the name of religion. That wasn't cool. But we also know a lot of charity and love that is spread through religion. We all know there's countless examples of the Mother Teresas of the world where through religion much good is done. So I just don't think it's a binary question.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question. But, I mean, I think that there's certain behaviors like humans and, like, I think human nature, if there was no religion, I think that we'd still have the same amount of violence and the same amount of peace. Because, being a murderer and a rapist and a scumbag is not a thing that's natural. Humans are tribal. People tend to, understand that okay, if I touch this thing, it hurts. So if I care for these people within my community, I'm not going to touch them with this device that injures them. You know, you're always going to have somebody who has bad intentions. So to me, it's kind of a weird thing, especially like when you just look, for me, when you really take an in-depth look at religion as a whole, and when you start looking at how many, you know, just like any good thing, how many bad things can be masked within this thing. You know, I think when you give any group of people an absolute